Hello there, that's the audio working. Thank you everybody for letting me know about the missing audio. For some reason it changed my microphone settings and lost the mic. Hopefully you can hear me now. Thank you, Tom. The button is now pressed. Hello to everybody, great to have you with me today. So for those new here, welcome to today's Sunday Tea Time live stream, live from Robin Hood country here in Nottingham, England. As always, do come say hello in the chat if you haven't done so already. Let me know who's out there and what you're up to today. Especially if it's your first time here, let me know where you heard about the stream and where you're from. But if you're new to these streams, welcome. My name is Darren and I stream here every weekend and I host them on YouTube and on Twitch. And these are recorded on YouTube so you can watch them later to rewatch any parts that you miss or just to watch it again to see exactly what I did and what features I used. And the stream's a chance for me to work on some drawing or animation in OpenToonz or Tahoma 2D and for me to share any OpenToonz or animation news. And today I'll be focusing on sharing news of recent developments in OpenToonz, especially those by JustBurner. So to not miss each stream, click that subscribe button and ring that bell to be notified of when I next stream, or keep an eye on my socials on my Facebook, Twitter and Discord where I share the link in plenty of time so you can check what time I'll be streaming in your part of the world. So let's see who we've got with us today. Welcome everybody. Who have we got here? We've got Leonardo. Hello, welcome. Thank you for the warning about the audio. I didn't check the chat quick enough to spot that, but hopefully you can all hear me okay now. Let me actually pop a bit of music on the background as well while we're chatting. Let me know if that's too loud and if you can hear it okay. Who else have we got? We've got Tom, of course. Hello there, Tom. Welcome. Good to have you with us again today. We've got Maria. Hello there, Maria. Bilderberger. Hello. Thank you for the warning. Welcome. Glad to have you with us today. We've got Kronos. Good morning, Kronos. Good to have you here. We've got TGD. Hello. Welcome to the stream today. Seconded, Maria. Absolutely. Tom and Amar's 11 Second Club entries that you're sharing the progress of on the Discord server. Great to see those. I don't know if you'd like me to share them on the stream today, but I'm happy to do so. But as I said in my comment, I think last night, it's quite interesting from the opposite side, watching the progress made, where I'm not involved in the actual entries, so I've not got the pressure of actually completing my entry, to see you working on yours. And it's an interesting prompt this month. Just one person speaking potentially to the camera, or it could be to a friend of theirs or photograph could be talking with, just to sort of enunciate what they're feeling. So it's kind of a lot about the characterization. So I'm looking forward to seeing your completed entries. Double O, hello, welcome. There's not been another official version of OpenToonz 00. The next version, presumably 1.7, should be out next January. They're only released annually, but there are nightly builds that are released almost nightly. So grab hold of a new version if you want to take a look. But today, really, it's about talking about new features that you can get hold of either in the nightly release or coming very, very soon. I've got a kind of a personal build here so I can show a couple of the features to you. But I want to run through what there is today. The Whatever Sutra. Hello there, welcome. From Olympia, USA. Hello. Good to have you with us today. Hen the Pen. Hello there. Good to have you with us as well. Oh, it's quite busy today. Namaste. Sonu Kumar, welcome from India. Good to have you here today. And we've got, let me give this a go. Terrible with names, but let me try. Ikechukwa? Hello, welcome. Anyway, great to have you with us today, even though I'm butchering your name, I'm sure. Okay, Tom, I'll take a look at that later. We'll pop that on. I like the way you're starting to work on the three-dimensionality, but we'll take a look at that probably after the break, just before I do my drawing, because I want to consider and chat a bit about what I want to do for my next 11 Second Club. So I was going to kind of cover that together, so we'll share that at the same time. Yes, it is melancholy. That's a great word for it. It's an interesting little prompt this month. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what I'd have done. I'd need a bit of time to think about that, I think. It's a bit of a warm one today. Don't know how it is where you all are in the world. I think it's about 30, 32 degrees here. Really warm and sticky weather, so I'm looking forward to taking a couple of breaks today to open the door here and to cool down. It is often very warm in the room anyway, especially so today. Just checking I've got everything running. Can you hear the music okay? Is that coming through all right? If you can let me know. I wasn't here last week. I didn't stream last weekend, unfortunately, because I was down in London for the weekend. Some of you will know. I tweeted about it and shared it on Discord. And I did something a bit different this time for a day trip or weekend trip I had, is I shared details on my Twitter account. So I posted photos as I went through the day to show where I'd gone to, and for people that aren't from this country, to show photos of London, really. So I've not done this before, but I thought it'd be an interesting thing to try and do. I've been trying to figure out how to... thank you, Maria. How about that? Is that coming through? I'm trying to figure out how to use the different social accounts, the Twitter, Instagram, Discord, what have you, and to differentiate them. So I thought I'd stick with Twitter for sharing those sorts of images about my personal time, what I'm doing, as well as everything else I share on Twitter. And you'll see some of these images over in the kitchen during the break today. We actually went to see a show, a musical, Back to the Future, on the Sunday. But we went down on the Saturday and had a bit of a tourist day around London. So I've got quite a few photos of some of the popular tourist destinations. So far, 00, no. So far, there's no burning of Sherwood. It's safe up to now, and hopefully it'll stay that way. But there has been 1 or 2 fires in a few places in the country. I saw in France there has been, and in Germany we've had 1 or 2 with the heat. Everything's just so dry and brittle, ready for burning. So yeah, it's that kind of a weather around here. But for the rest of us, it's just so warm. We've got Warren. Hello there, Warren. Good to have you with us. I saw you shared something earlier today in the Discord server. Yeah, your parkour animation. Excellent. Was that done with... was that all done by hand, or is it using some sort of tracing or strong referencing or something? Just want to click on that again, actually. Got it on my screen here. It looks, yeah, very realistic motions. By hand, excellent. Yeah, it looks really nice. Is that part of a larger animation? Yeah, it's good to use a reference anyway. We talk about that quite a lot. It is useful. You always get a better result for sure. So yeah, so I've had a busy old week. As I say, last weekend I was busy all weekend, so I couldn't squeeze a stream in. I was hoping to do a bit of a stream during the week, didn't get a chance for that either. Not really had much time to get ready for today. I've had a little bit of time, but not as much as I'd like to have done. So going to be a nice wobbly, shaky day, so we'll see how that goes. So shall we jump in? And as I like to do on these streams, should we take a look at what happened since I last streamed? What happened last week? So this section really is a chance for me to let you know about any OpenToonz or animation news that I've heard about since we last streamed, and share any news about what I've been working on. So let me bring that screen down. Okay, so let's pop up my last videos I like to do. So this, I finally got around to completing this video and uploading it, and it's my top 5 tips for effect reuse. So it's all about how you can use the same settings for an effect in more than one scene, or to use with more than one column and in different scenes in projects. So I've packed in quite a lot of extra tips along the way. I think you'll find it really useful. So if you've not already watched it, do take a look at that. I think you'll enjoy it. My next video that I've planned to follow on directly after this one which I've not started scripting or recording yet, so it's unlikely to be out this Friday, it may be the following week, is about how to use the macro effect features to help you with your effects, how to set them up and how to use them. And these are just a way to combine multiple effects into a single node that you can use in different projects. So it's a great way to wrap up your own effects for a specific cartoon or animation. So if you want to apply, say, a slight blurring, maybe a blowing out of the colours or adjustment of the colours, or making them black and white, adding a bit of effect over the top to give them a bit of a texture perhaps, then instead of having 2, 3 or 4 effects chained together on every column that you want to apply this effect, you can group them together into a macro effect which shows just one node on screen, and you can use that for different columns. Really, really useful. So I can't wait to put that together, but it's a slightly complex subject, so it's going to take me a little while to work through the best way to present it and to script it for you, but I'm hoping I can get it recorded this week at least and be ready for the following Friday. So do keep your eyes open for that. I also want to mention for my Udemy supporters, Patreon supporters, that I finished editing my latest video for Patreon for my top tier teapot supporters, which I think is really interesting. Let me pop this up here. There we go. So it's a behind the scenes look at my last live stream, including showing the first 10 minutes of the stream where I wasn't actually connected. So you get to see the good and the bad during that. So you get to see how things look from my point of view, looking over my shoulder during the stream. And you can see at the bottom right of the screen here, I've got my Stream Deck in view, so you can see how I'm using that to change scenes and show overlays, that kind of thing. Then also just how I go about drawing, how I use the tablet and the layout of the office and the studio as I'm working through it. So that's a really interesting video that I was really pleased to get completed and uploaded to Patreon. So do take a look at that and see what other rewards you'll find there. And you can see a link for that down below in the description. So let's go to the main part of the stream today that I've started to get ready for. And that's where I want to have a chat about some recent changes to OpenToonz. And this is with huge thanks to Shun and JustBurner. And there's a few other developers fixing bugs and adding new features, but these are the main two that have added the features recently that I want to focus on. So for those that don't know, Shun works for Studio Ghibli and is the gatekeeper for any kind of code fixes going into OpenToonz. So he needs to be sure that any fixes will either help his studio or at least not hinder them. So he has to be careful which fixes go in, which has caused a few problems in the past, and is kind of, I think, one of the reasons we have Tahoma 2D. So his main focus has got to be his studio, his company, and for what's going into OpenToonz. So it's kind of careful on what fixes go in. So sometimes it can take longer than you might expect. But he also fixes other bugs and small features that he comes across that's useful for the whole community. And then we've got JustBurner, who's been working with our own Soda Pop on some features. Hello there, Enyo-san. Welcome. Good to have you with us today. Long time no see. So JustBurner's been making fixes that benefit the community, with Soda Pop helping by both bankrolling some of these changes, putting his own money behind them on our behalf, as well as helping JustBurner to decide what things to change and what things to work on. So I've got huge thanks to both JustBurner and to Soda Pop for working on this, because these changes you've been working on really will help the community. It's great to have you back, Enyo. Really great to have you back. Going through a few updates to OpenToonz today to show some recent fixes that have gone through either to the nightly build or hopefully coming soon to the nightly build. So I want to go through some of these today. So let me show you a few of them. So I could show you either on the screen or I might go full screen. Let me try that. There we go. It might be easier to see what we've got here. So I've got a list here of recent fixes that have been added in the past perhaps month or two that I want to go through, so quite a few to cover. There is a link to these down in the description, so do take a look at that if you want to see more detail, read through them yourself, and also if you want to bookmark it to come back to this list to see new features as they come through. So rather than waiting for me to highlight them, you can see them yourself when they go in there. So let's start from this first one here. So this first, an initialization wizard. So I've actually got a kind of a special build of OpenToonz where I can demonstrate this myself directly in OpenToonz. I'll show you that in a second. Yes, TGD, that's exactly what we're talking about in the next video, is the macro features. Macro's a strange name for them, I think, to be honest, but that's what they call them. So if you look for macro in the online documentation, you'll probably be able to figure it out yourself. But I plan to make a video this coming week to show you how to do so. Also, if you've seen last Friday's video, I show you a technique as well that might be useful for that, so perhaps take a look at that there. The latest release is 1.6, Enyo-san. Let me show you that actually. Let me go to a new tab here and the OpenToonz page. So if you go to the main OpenToonz page and click on the download link and then the OpenToonz button, skip past the terms of use, or if you've got a lot of time spare, have a little read of them. And you can either download version 1.6 for Windows or Mac, which is the last release from, was it from January or February this year, or the nightly build, which is the one I'd always recommend downloading, because that'll have the latest bug fixes and features in there. And that'll be a build from perhaps a couple of days ago, so it's kind of the very latest to take a look at. But the thing I'll be working with today isn't one of these two builds. It's a special build that JustBurner was working on that I've got a copy of to show this first feature. So let me run this. Here we go. So basically it's, excuse me, knocked my mouse off. So basically, are you saying, Warren, that you're worried that the nightly build might not be as stable, or are you telling us it isn't as stable? I've always found it to be just as stable, if not more stable, than the official 1.6 version, because you've got extra bugs fixed that would make 1.6 more unstable. But I know a lot of people are concerned about getting, right, I understand. A lot of people are concerned about getting the latest nightly build in case it contains new bugs, and that's always a potential problem. But you do know with the nightly build, it's definitely fixed some bugs. So for me, it feels more stable. So I've always found it to be more so. But you can always go back, try the nightly build. If you find an issue, log a bug report and then go back to version 1.6. So the option's there for you. And if you know how, you can always make a portable version of OpenToonz so you can run them side by side. A little bit tricky to do so. There's a couple of rules to follow to do that, but it's not too hard. But simply just installing one over the other is perfectly fine. No, it's not. I don't believe it is, Enyo-san, unfortunately. I wish you had a choice in here of a portable or an installable version. The only thing to consider when you install a new version is to rename your OpenToonz stuff folder, because that contains all the settings for the program, which includes menu items. So if one version has got a new menu item, if you leave your old settings in place and run the program, you won't necessarily see the menu item to start the new feature. So always rename the OpenToonz stuff folder. You may not have any extra detail, any extra stuff in there. So if you've not changed any settings and you haven't got any projects in there, you could just delete it if you want to. But I always say rename, just in case there's something you've forgotten. So rename it, perhaps pop a date on of the install date of when you went to the new version, so you can always go back to it if you lose something later. Okay, so this first feature is when you've installed OpenToonz, the install is exactly the same as it has been all along, and when you run for the first time, you get to see this dialog, the installation wizard it's called. So you get to see it the first time you run, so you can choose your preferred language to use with the program. Click next. You've now got a bit of help for installing third-party extensions, so you can click the setup button for FFmpeg to show the path of where to look for your FFmpeg. So if you've already got a version installed, you can browse to that instead of having to copy files around. So that's really handy. And I keep my FFmpeg outside of OpenToonz, so I put it in my C drive. Is it C drive or D drive? I forget now. Now I'm live, I always do. Yep, C drive, FFmpeg. So I can just point to there of where those 3 executables are and press open. And now that's set up without me having to copy any files around. And it's a little bit of a reminder of what the FFmpeg there is for. And if I go back, I can do the same for Rhubarb, which is the auto lip sync tool. And again, it's got a link to where you can download it from. Or if you've already downloaded it, point it to the folder where it is. Really, really handy to do and have that as part of the first time you run. Yes, Double O, I guess there is. There is kind of a risk that old animations may not load when you download a newer version. It's kind of the same with any software though. When you get newer versions, they change the way files are loaded and saved. Most of the time though, they should be compatible. So it should recognise the older version and still load it in. But again, feel free to try it out. See if it works with your version. You can always roll back and get the older version if you want to. So you can always go back, try out the nightly build, and then go back to version 1.6. And once you've downloaded it, of course, you can still keep that executable in a safe folder somewhere to go back to later. If you want to go back to perhaps like 1.5, 1.4, if necessary. Personally, I've not had a problem with it yet. Loading older projects. I suspect it depends how complicated they are. If you've got plastic tool animations in there, or maybe some of the expressions for the animation tool, it could potentially affect them, potentially, but I've not come across that yet or heard about that. But it is something I would be concerned about, the same as you. But generally, if you're in the middle of an animation, I tend not to upgrade unless you've got a bug that really stops you from working. So stick with what you're working with until you get to the end of the animation, and in between animations, that's a good time to try out the latest nightly. Okay, so that's the third-party extensions it's given you hints for. Next, it gives you a little option to choose the room layout, and you've only got the default rooms and the Studio Ghibli rooms. Really, you want the default rooms most of it. You wouldn't change that. You might change the theme though, to change the colour to be either the lighter theme or the darker theme. You've got neutral, you've got 5 different options in here. So you can choose your theme colour. You can do all of this from the preferences, but it's a way of putting it in front of you while you're first running for the first time. I suspect we'll have more options added here in the future. Click next. Next there's a great option to present to people where you're going to manage your projects, where you're going to store them. So the default is in the OpenToonz stuff projects. I always recommend not using that location because when you install the new version, you'll want to, as I said, rename the OpenToonz stuff folder so your projects are now moved to a different location. I keep mine in my documents/OpenToonz, but you can choose to keep them elsewhere. So in desktop, you can create an OpenToonz folder, or a custom location, you can add a path to a list of paths of where you can keep your projects. Because OpenToonz is a little bit different, that you have to tell the program which folder you're storing your projects in. Most programs, you run them up and you choose save as, and you can pick any folder on your computer or even on the network to save to. OpenToonz needs to know where you're saving them, but as I say, I'd recommend not using the stuff but using documents or another location. Giapo, hello, welcome. Good to have you again. Good to have you here. I'm really well today. How are you doing? So choose your locations where you're going to save and then click finish. And because this is a special build, you notice by the icon colour, kind of a pink colour there, we've got a different theme. So we've got some pink colours throughout the whole program here. So that's kind of it really for the first time. Let me just close that 1 second. So that's shown the first time you run the program. If you want to go back and you see it again because you like the way things are presented and you don't know perhaps where they are in your preferences. So for instance, the project locations are shown here on the preferences, so you can choose to save your projects in your My Documents on the desktop or in a custom location. That's shown there. But if you want to see that wizard, there's a box here you can tick, Run Installation Wizard Next Launch. So if you tick that, close this window and then close the program, the next time you run, it'll show that wizard again. And you can choose to just hit cancel and then skip it and go straight to OpenToonz. And once you've run once with the wizard, until you tick that box, that's not shown again. So have a sip of water. Very warm today. Great, thank you. I'm good. I'm pleased you're doing well today. So the second feature I wanted to mention, you can see right here on the front page, is the startup dialog. This is just a local build, so it's not a version you can get hold of yourself. It's just a version with these features in, so I'll show a couple of the features to you today, because some of these things aren't yet in the nightly build. They're kind of really brand new, but you'll get to see them in the next, well, in the coming days and weeks. So hopefully you'll see that soon. So then when you go to the startup dialog, when this comes through, you've still got the recent scenes on the right hand side you can load, but you'll notice the box down here with some thumbnails in. Really handy, I really like this. If you change your project, it'll show a thumbnail for each of the scenes in the scenes folder for that project. So it'll make it easier, hopefully, to pick the right scene and the right project out. And I think I'm likely to want to use that more than using the recent scenes list. Unless I know it's the very latest one that I loaded last, I think I'd go through the project dialog, the project box, more often this time than I would ordinarily. So it's quite a really neat little feature there. One more very small feature, little button, Explore folder. Opens up, it's open on a separate screen, opens up an Explorer view to that project. So if I go to a different project, so my 5 FX tips, and then Explore folder, it'll open a folder to that project, so you can get straight to the project if you need to perhaps verify which one it is before you load the scene. Really handy that you can get to that directly from the first dialog. And for those of you that don't know, if you've closed that startup dialog, you can always open it again from the Windows menu. At the bottom here, Startup pop-up. So you can always get back to that if that's your preferred way to load projects. I think, hello Amar, by the way, welcome to the stream today. Really, I think the developers just, in general, apart from Shun, who's working for the studio, in general, the other developers work on what they find most interesting. It's kind of what you have in open source projects. So it's what they find interesting, what they think is worthwhile working on. So it might not necessarily be the most beneficial thing for the whole of the animation community, but there's certainly quality of life fixes, as you say. But there are stability improvements happening all the time. You say fixing the backup iteration features. There aren't really any backup iteration features, but again, feel free to do so yourself. I say this to everybody. If you know a developer, if you are a developer, feel free to jump in there and fix these features that would help everybody else. It's really difficult to find developers to work on things, which is why SodaPop's been having to pay for some of these features to be added into here. Yes, they are 00. Yes, you can download previous versions. All the code is stored on Git, so you can get to any official version 1.4, 1.5, 1.6, or just at any iteration in between. When I first saw this opening dialog box with the scenes thumbnails in here, I wasn't too sure if it was necessarily a useful fix if I'd use it, but only after using it for a few hours earlier on today, it's feeling like a much nicer way to get to the scenes. The fact that I now will use the project drop down here when I never did before. So if I go to my sandbox, there's nothing in here because I've just installed this. My Patreon tiers. So even though I try to name the scenes relevant to what's in them, sometimes, same as yourselves, I do find myself just calling a scene test 1, test 2, test 3. But if you see a thumbnail of a character walking, another thumbnail of a drawing of a building, it's really clear which is which. Katash. Sorry, apologies for butchering the name. You say you can't open OpenToonz. What could be the issue? I'm afraid 100 different things could be the issue. It depends on so many things. If you're on Windows, Mac or Linux, it can make a difference to what the issue is. It depends what stage you're at. You say you can't open OpenToonz. Some people are trying to run the zip file. Have you unzipped the download and run the installer? Did the installer complete? Did your virus check software get in the way? Sometimes it pops up a dialog. It can be hidden behind other windows where it's asking you a question before to run a program the first time. That kind of thing. So it kind of depends, I think, is the answer. The best bet is to jump on the Discord server. There's a link down below in the description, and then start sharing some screenshots. Tell people what your computer system you've got, what stage you've got to. So download, install, double clicking the icon. Do you see any messages on screen? So if you pop that on the Discord server, and someone there will be able to help. I'll be there after the stream to help answer any questions as well, but it's much easier with that kind of extra detail later. Oh, the version control, right, yes, that one. I'm with you, Amar. I was thinking of the backup files. So in the preferences, version control, yes, that's really, it kind of works, but it's tricky to set up. It's not as smooth as it could be. It'd be great if it was connected into Git, a common way to do version control. Absolutely, it would be. But again, it's finding a developer that's willing to spend the time on that kind of feature. Just checking up on the chat here. In fact, for those of you without the chat on screen, let me see if I've got it here. Yeah, if I pop that up here above my head, then you can take a look at the chat and you'll know what I'm talking about if it's not on your screen at the minute. Okay, thank you. After the loading screen, it doesn't show after that, so you tried reinstalling. After the loading screen doesn't show. Yeah, I'd be tempted to turn off your virus check software and try again. Not installing, try running again without the virus check on. That often just stops programs from running. It stops because it's not being registered with the virus software or what have you. That's worth trying for sure. Amar, you say it's always been there but never worked. It has worked. I don't know how to work it. I've not tried to set it up. I remember Rodney on the OpenToonz Discord set it up and had it working. He did say it was a little bit tricky to set up, but not impossible to do so. I don't know how much help there is in the online docs. Certainly, if you've taken a look at that. Never tried to use it myself. Working on my own. If I was working with other people, I might well try to do so. I'm trying to remember which version control software it runs with as well. I did remember Rodney telling me something version. I'm trying to think what it was. I can't remember. Again, the online docs. Subversion. Thank you, Tom. Subversion. That was it. Have you tried setting it up, Tom? Did it work for you? As I know Rodney set it up because I chatted to him a couple of years ago, I think it was, and I was talking about using version control. So he set this up and he was going to go through it with me to show me how to set it up, and I didn't go through it with him at the time because I didn't need to, but it's something I ought to really get into. I know it's not super easy to get into. I mean, let me take a quick look while we're just chatting today, because we're talking about features and development features. So let me have a look while we're here. The online guide. So to search the docs, let's just type in version. So I've said to people before when they've asked questions about OpenToonz, don't be afraid to jump in the documentation, the online guide. There's a lot of information there. It's not always easy to find. It's not laid out particularly well, but a little bit of a search, you can often find what you need. So let's type version, see what we're getting here. Yeah, I think that's right, Tom. More complexity than needed. You kind of need a layer on top of version control. You might want like an advanced system for experts in version control to manage every single file and every folder and working on projects together. But it'd be nice if there's a simpler layer on top where you could just say, here's a project, save to version control, load it from version control, and a little bit of rollback between versions. I'm on version 52, version number 32, just to roll back to an earlier version, that kind of thing. But it takes some time for people to get into there and to fix these issues. As I said a long time ago, if I'd got a bit more time and I hadn't got into doing the tutorials, I likely would have got into a bit more development of OpenToonz. But C++ and Qt, it's a bit ugly, a bit ugly to work with. Yeah, thank you, Tom. So just to put my 2 pennies in, please do carry on, Tom or Amor, if you've got anything else to say there, but I'll answer you as well, Maria. The point of version control is to save versions. You may have noticed on the streams, I often run my backup tool. So let me run that up now. So I've not run that up yet today. So I created this tool for creating backups. So basically, every time I hit save, you may have seen this a few times, it saves a copy on disk. So I get a backup of the whole project every time I save. And it means that I can be sure that if OpenToonz crashes, I've got a version of when I last saved and the previous versions. So if something goes wrong, or if I change my mind, or if I want to go back to an earlier version, so if you imagine working through your 11-second club and you've got your final animation, inked and coloured, effects added, and you want to go back to the storyboard version or the sketch version, you can go back to an earlier version. So this is why I used and created my backup tool, because doing so directly in OpenToonz with C++ and Qt as it uses is a lot trickier than creating it as a standalone program. So just really handy to keep versions of your program as a single animator. But also for, there's the help look, but also for multiple people working on a project, it means that if I edit a scene and you edit a scene, the version software can merge them together so that we can both add items to the scene, new levels, new columns, new drawings, and as I reload my project from version control, it includes your changes as well. So it's kind of a good way to work together. But then there's problems where we've both edited the same thing and the version control software can't work out which one to choose or which one's better or how to merge them. So this is where you need to get involved yourself, and that's where it gets a little bit complex. So really handy thing to have, version control. So as I say, go to the online help, type version control, and it's got details here. So subversion is what it uses, and it's got details of how to set it up and how to install it. So take a look at that if you're interested. But I know it's not really easy to set up, but it might be worth taking a look at, especially if you're working with other people. I may be behind on the chat here. Amar saying in the install wizard it should allow you to set this stuff folder. You can do that during the install wizard. the actual installation wizard. So when you download the zip and double click it, it asks you where you want the OpenToonz stuff folder, because I keep mine on my D drive, not C drive. But it depends what you're doing with it. As I say, as long as you save your projects outside of the stuff folder, it kind of doesn't matter where that is, I don't think. Kevin, hello, welcome. Good to have you here today. You say you can easily forget as where your files are being saved. It's kind of down to you, Amar, of where you want to save them. As I say, I save mine in my OpenToonz stuff folder. Sorry, OpenToonz stuff. In my documents OpenToonz folder, away from the stuff, so I can update and install without worrying about losing projects or where they are. And I always know where they are. And I've got my own backup system for taking a backup of my documents, which copies my OpenToonz things, but also music, pictures and my other documents onto an external drive. So again, it's file management and down to kind of each person. Thank you, Double O. This is what I was saying earlier. It depends what kind of computer you have. I know Macs have got different issues to PCs to Linux computers. Yeah, it really does. And personally, again, as you see on the streams, I use my backup versioning software for the same reason. Yes, Maria, exactly. I think Amar as well, actually, that's a good point you brought up. You mentioned, especially since OpenToonz doesn't just save a single file, I think that's kind of one of its benefits for using versioning, the fact that they're separate files. So if you've got an agreement with somebody, if I'm working with Tom and I'm working on the background images, Tom's doing the sketching of character 1, Amar, you're doing character 2 maybe, we're working on different levels and they are actually different files, so there's no merging issues of those files to consider. The only merging issue is potentially the scene file of which columns have which levels, which drawings are exposed from those levels. But that's, as Tom said, it's kind of organisation and procedures to manage how that works. I'm not sure how I'd necessarily go about improving the versioning for multiple users. That could be a tricky one. Because of the merging of drawings and of scenes to make sure that everyone's data stays saved. Yeah, good idea, Maria. Good idea. Amar uses a custom folder. Sometimes when I try opening old files, if they're not locked to a project, it can break or stop you from opening a file. Yes, again, that's just down to understanding the file structure for an OpenToonz project, I think, and understanding that the drawings are in the extras or drawings folders of a project. They're referenced by the scene in the scenes folder, and that's linked to the project folder. If you move any of the files around, it can cause an issue, but they're not broken. You just need to realise they're not connected and then load them into the right scene that's connected to the project. Again, OpenToonz isn't really super useful for beginners for that kind of thing. It's quite easy to get it wrong and to break projects or to lose track of where files are. If it saved a single file, again, not to promote it, but if you want to take a look at my backup tool, it's on Gumroad. You can all take a look if you want to. But the backup tool saves a single zip file of the project. So it saves it as one single file. So you can move it around quite easily and you can see where it is. If I open up an Explorer view, do I have one to show you? I don't know if you'll particularly find this useful. So yeah, I create a backups folder in the project. Here we go. We've got an OT backup file, which is a single file containing the whole project. Because although I do like the separate files within a project, I think it's handy just to have a single file. So I could send this file to somebody if they want a copy of the project, and it's all in here. And in fact, it's just a zip file. So I could easily go into one of these and rename it go to the end and just change that OT backup and call it .zip, and it'll work like a zip file. But yeah, it'd be nice if OpenToonz could save to a single file as well, I think. Yeah, it's clunky but also useful, so I can see both sides of it. I quite like having the separate files. I find it useful, and using as a software developer where you have a single solution file in Visual Studio with many projects in it. Each project has many folders, each folder has many files. It's kind of a system I'm used to, so it kind of makes sense to me, but I know for new users it's horrendous not saving to a single file. So you keep getting those plus. I believe, Kevin, that's down to the case. So all the folders have got a lowercase letter. So if you accidentally or somehow put plus capital D drawings, I think that's when you get the plus drawn on the folder name. I think the case was important for Linux or Linux servers. Seem to recall, so in the code for Tahoma 2D, I think Manung John changed it and fixed it, so it ignores the case for creating folders. I think that's where the plus came from. Windows has always been clunky, especially for debugging issues. Not sure really what you mean there. You can't or shouldn't share projects between OpenToonz versions. I don't see why not, Enyo-san. I'm not sure if there have been any breaking changes going forwards. So in a newer version of OpenToonz, say 1.6, you should still be able to load a project from 1.4. Because for some of my overlays, so if I, for instance, suggest that you hit the like button, then that overlay has been created in OpenToonz, and I made that in 1.4, 1.5, that loads perfectly fine in 1.6. So you should be okay loading older versions, but I'm with you, I'll be kind of wary about potentially there could be an issue between versions of your animation and the version of the program that loads it. But ordinarily, I'd have thought if you load the animation and then save it out again, it'll add any missing data that it needs. Yeah, you should be able to, Enyo-san. You should be able to rescue them. I mean, you might need to create or want to create a new project and then load the levels in to your project, but you ought to be able to still just load them as scenes. That's interesting, the plus thing, Kevin, about the you use the default ones and you never save in special folders. When I've seen it happen, it's when people have changed the name. So they've gone to a project. So let me close some of this off a second. So you've gone to a project and they've, let me open up a recent scene. So I've got something on screen here. That one, I'll take a look at that later. And then they've gone to a level and they've perhaps saved it, or they've changed the level settings maybe. So they've clicked on this frame and chose level settings. And then instead of saying plus extras, they've gone in here and either browsed to a folder or typed something, and they've kind of somehow gone in and changed something. Or when you've started a new level, they've gone to this save-in dialog and changed something there. That's where I've noticed the plus appearing. I've not had it myself. Not 100% sure why. But it's something to keep an eye on, because that could certainly break your old projects. However, the drawings and levels I'd expect would still be saved perfectly fine, just not in the location they'd be expecting. So you might have to just find them, browse to them, and move them manually outside of OpenToonz for them to work. Morning, Jose. Good to have you with us today. How are you doing today? We're having a bit of a chat of OpenToonz and some of its features. I've got a list of new features I want to share with you to let you take a look at, but just a general chat about the features at the minute. Yeah, exactly, Tom. Going from a new to an old version of OpenToonz. I know that Manong John's warned us for Tahoma because for the, I believe it's for the some of the drawing tools or for the perspective grids, they say something different to the scene and perhaps to the drawing level as well. So if you've created a project, a new project in 1.3 Tahoma, you shouldn't load that into 1.2 or earlier. So you can't backwards load into an older version, correct. But going to newer versions should be fine, I'd expect. Hello there, Volk. Welcome to the stream today. Good to have you with us today. Yeah, unfortunately, there's nobody really working on the rigging features in OpenToonz at the minute. Exporting tools, I know there's been some exporting changes, and one I'm going to mention in a short while, a big one for exporting. Yeah, it would be handy for everything to be consolidated to one folder. Yes, good. As you say, it's not a total loss. It's annoying having to reset up the timing again, but you've got your drawings, you've got all the levels in there. Putting it together in a new scene, bit of a pain, but at least you haven't lost it all. So I'm not sure why that's going wrong for you or why that would go wrong. Vuk's saying, I wish we had scripting like in Blender. We do have some scripting ability. I'm not really sure how useful it is though. So you can create a script to create, I believe, like a new level, to create 10 blank drawings in that level and expose them on the timeline. That kind of basic setup scripting ability. And again, in the online guide, take a look in here on the F1 and you'll see some details of how to do that. Yeah, it does. You're not wrong, Amor. It does seem a bit much, but the problem is that's the way it was created like 10, 15 years ago, whenever it was. It could do with an overhaul. I wish it did have that ability. The setup dialog, it'd be nice in there if you had the option to say, how much of an expert are you? Do you want to have separate files in these separate folders, or do you want a single file? In fact, when you go to the startup pop-up, and you create a new project, where you get this option here of the folder names, and do you want to append scene path to separate the drawings and inputs and extras into scene folders. If there was a separate option, a single separate option to say, instead of all these gubbins, just save one file, please. That'd be amazing. And it could do, as I've done kind of for my backup, where it saves to a single zip file and you could choose to unzip it later if you have to debug anything. Or you could send that zip file into our Discord or to the developers and say there's a problem with this project, and they could unzip it and look deeper if they wanted to. So you could quite easily do that, I believe. And that would be nice. And perhaps for newbies, when they start, the default option is to save a single file. And ideally, you wouldn't have folders, you wouldn't have chosen folders to save them in. So where we talked earlier about the install wizard that asked the question of where you're going to save your projects, this section here, instead of having to say, I think they'll save in my documents OpenToonz, you just do file save as and pick any location on your computer. Why can't you just do that? But yeah, that'd be my kind of wish for that thing. Okay, out of interest, Kevin, what's your system? Windows, Mac, Linux? Yeah, that's right. I mean, you mentioned there, Tom, about simplifying is like optimization. This is what was done for Tahoma 2D, yet as soon as it was simplified, there's always some users that wanted that complex feature. And slowly some of them are coming back, I think. So it'd be nice if, by default, out of the box, because most new users are by default new users. So out of the box, if it's saved as a single zipped file, and you could choose in the preferences to say, right, actually save this as a more complex system, or when you go to, as I say, a new project and hit the new project button, you could then say expert mode and then see all of this. That would be so much better, I think. But again, it's one of those things of finding a developer to do it. Finding someone that's got the time and the expertise to get in there and make these changes. Well, I'm glad you've found us, whatever. Should I call you whatever or Sutra? Anyway, TWS, glad you found us today. Yeah, no problem at all. It's recorded, so you'll find it on YouTube later, so take a look when you get a chance. Hopefully speak soon. Yeah, and the thing is, Amar, it's something they could, or someone could quite easily change to improve it, to make it simpler for the home user. That's right, the average Joe or Jill. I mean, unfortunately, I can't see that happening unless there's an explosion in people using OpenToonz or funding from somewhere. It's just not likely to happen, I hate to say. I've said it before, pipe dreams, it's nice to have them, but we need to understand they are pipe dreams. I've seen lots of comments in the OpenToonz feature requests section where people are saying, can OpenToonz be changed to do this? And the answer is, well, in theory it could, but there's nobody here to do so. So it'd be nice to fix these things. And to say that the saving and backup would have been one of the first things I'd have taken a look at if I was going to be developing on this. But I'm not. How hard could it be? I think we all know the answer to that one. Let me pop up my little list. Here we are. So back to where I was before then. So that's two new features that I mentioned first. The initialization wizard. And again, you can take a look down below at the link to this list to have a look at the features yourself, where he talks about exactly what you can change in there and how it's set up. Ooh, one change he has made, actually, quite interesting to share this, is he's added a new drop down. You'll see that in the next version, where you can choose the icon color. So for lighter themes you want dark icons, and for darker themes you want light icons. So you can either choose the light, the dark, or let it decide the best. So that's something you'll see differently when it comes to the nightly builds. I never used the autosave, Amar. People talk about that quite a lot, and it's something I just never use, because when I first started using OpenToonz, it just got in the way too much. So I'm just used to pressing save very, very regularly. So for those who don't know, when you start a new project, at the bottom right of the dialog, you can choose to autosave the project as you're working on it and tell it every how many minutes do you want it to save. I'll leave that turned off personally, but you can turn that on and use that as much as you like if that's helpful. But if you're partway through drawing, it can freeze for a second while it saves until you can carry on, so you kind of lose strokes and it gets a bit confusing for my liking. Hey Tom, don't be cheeky. It is easy for a programmer that can be bothered, but C++ and Qt together, not a fun combination. Absolutely, Amar. It would be good if OpenToonz could use the same brush engine as Critter. That'd be really good. Yeah, exactly. A house of cards is exactly how it is. Yes, me too. Save button on my tablet is exactly what I do. The very top button. And often when I'm working, I'll hold my tablet. You may have seen me from behind. I'll hold the tablet and my thumb sits on the button. There we are. So I'm drawing away and I'll do something. I'll do a few frames or a few bits. Save. Do some more drawing. Save. As I like it, save. Yeah, it's just a habit you get into. And we've got Sue Has Animation. Hello there, welcome to the stream. Good to have you with us today. Okay, so that's the setup dialog, the install dialog. I've also mentioned the existing scenes list in the startup pop-up here. So it shows the scene images. Save early, save often. Jose, if you have time to and chance to, absolutely it'd be great to have you in there. There's lots of small things you'd find in OpenToonz that I'm sure you could improve. As I say, when you've completed a fix though, you'd have to get it past Shun. He has to take a look at it because again, he's working for Studio Ghibli, so he needs to be sure that things don't break their users. And for me, because of so many things stored in the settings, provided there's a setting for it, there can be a default setting set for new users and one for the studio. They could quite easily have a system where they have their studio settings for all of their animators set up differently to the general public. So it's not impossible, but do take a look at that if you have time for sure. Yeah, that's right, Vuk. And this is why I'm here. This is why you all do a lot of what you do to spread the word about OpenToonz. Yes, I saw some of your thoughts on AI there, Amar. Let me go from the top to the bottom of this list to go through a few more things for you today before I take a break. So Crash Handler is the next thing. So this again, JustBurner, been working very hard on OpenToonz to improve it. It's added a handler to catch any crashes of OpenToonz. So that again should be with the nightly build very soon. So that's basically if something goes wrong, OpenToonz breaks, this dialog can pop up with some details about your computer and a link to open the issue web page so you can log a bug and have the details of your computer, which can be helpful to fix problems with that bug. Now it doesn't, as you've mentioned in here, it's not connected to any specific software, so it doesn't necessarily pull out all the information that will be useful, but as he says, it's definitely a good start. So that'll hopefully help to fix some more bugs in OpenToonz if we start reporting them when crashes happen. Now for me, I don't get as many crashes these days as I used to, touch wood. You never know if that'll change. Really the crashes I tend to get is when Windows updates or my graphics driver updates, and there's kind of a difference between the two programs running together. So there's a couple of things here from Shun. He fixed the preview range not to be negative. So that's those little white arrows. So if you've got an animation here and you've got this little white arrow to set the start play marker, move that out of the way. This one here, and the end play marker. In certain situations you can get a negative value for the frame number and could cause a problem and could crash. So again, another fix to stop some crashing there. It's made a tiny change to the X-sheet frame area. So let me make this larger. So you can see that. So it's a tiny change. So if you've changed the view on the X-sheet to show either 3-second or 6-second intervals, where you can see P1, it's put a bit of a space between the P1 and the frame number, just so it's clearer to read. So a small change, but again, a small useful little change. So I was saying, feel free to get in there and make any fixes you think are necessary. This is the kind of small fixes that really make a difference and make working with the program a lot easier. I've never tried. Well, sorry, I did try once Critter on Android. That was quite a long time ago on my phone. Didn't work very well at all back then. I suspect it's changed quite a lot. I've not got a tablet though, just my phone, so I'm not sure if it's really useful to have on there. Yeah, sharing the screen to a larger screen could be useful, you're right. You know what? I think, because I'm so warm today, I'm going to take a short break before I continue down this list, and we'll finish those off after the break. That's right, Maria. All these small changes really do make a big difference, and it's a teeny tiny change, but I think it'd be really helpful to get that through there. So again, that should be in the nightly build very soon. So let me just take a quick break, and I'll see you in 5 minutes when we'll carry on with this list. So I'll see you very shortly. And welcome back. Thanks to everyone for sharing their art today that I shared in today's kitchen tea break room. Remember, if you'd like to see your OpenToonz or Tahoma 2D art or animation in the kitchen from one of these streams, just share it in the art or animation channels in the OpenToonz and Tahoma 2D section of my Discord. And details of joining the Discord can be found down below in the description. Okie dokie, so where were we? So just checking up on the chat here. Yeah, Blender and OpenToonz together or Blender on its own. There's plenty of options out there these days, which is really good. At least you've got the option now to do things. Okay, so I'm going to go down this list of other features been added. Let me jump into here. Next one, yes, another interesting one from Shun that I've not got in my running version of the program at the minute. So this PR is to add a crosshair in the center of the camera capture feature, and that's when you're using OpenToonz and you press this button down here to mark the camera, a separate sub camera, and you can draw on the screen of where you want it, and you can move that around. But this feature adds a cross into the center of the screen to make it clearer where that is. Again, it's something I think that the studios have asked for, not necessarily that the general public will either use, know about, or find useful. But I want to mention that as we're passing down the list. Next, really interesting feature coming up here from Shun, the custom panel feature. And this is to allow you to create your own panels in OpenToonz. So a panel is one of these areas. So if I go to the Windows menu and pop open a style editor, that here is a panel. It's got different controls on it, different interface controls and buttons and that kind of thing. If I go to another one, I can open up a schematic here, and that's another panel. So you can create your own panels that you can leave floating or dock on the sides of the screen. And it creates a template file with a button arrangement you can use from a template list of them. You can choose the commands to put into that panel, so you can create your own shorter toolbar if you wanted to, with just the buttons that you want on there for drawing or whatever. Perhaps working with the plastic tool, you might choose to do so. So you've got your own plastic tool use panel docked away. So it's got information in this PR of how to create a custom panel. So you'll find that when you get the next nightly build with that feature in. Basically, it'll be in the Windows menu in a new section called Custom Panels. So if you go to the Windows menu after you've installed, and again when you install the nightly build, don't forget to rename your stuff folder, or you won't get to see the new menu items because they're stored in the stuff folder. So in here there'll be a new section where you can add the custom panels. So take a look how you can add those in. And then down below, Rodney went through and created his own panel with his own buttons on that he found useful. So it's got some examples of what you can do with that. That looks like a really useful feature and something I think I might come back to later. And because these panels are saved on disk in a file, a .ui file, it also means you can share them with each other. So you could create your own panel for, again, as I mentioned, the plastic tool, or for working with the animate tool. So you can have buttons for choosing the animate tool, for the selection tool, maybe some for changing the options for the animate tool, a couple of buttons to pop up the stage schematic or the function editor. Could be really useful, I think. And then again, you can share that with other people so they can get to the same panel. So I'm looking forward to having a play with that, and no doubt I'll make a video on that in the future to show how you can use that. A couple of effects fixes he's put through here. So he's changed the sampling size for the gradient warp effects. There's nothing to show in there, so I won't click into that. Again, you can look into detail of this if you want to later. Particle effects, motion blur. I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. So it's added a blur option for particle effects. So the faster they move, they look blurred, which makes them look more natural. Again, to do with effects, he's fixed the hiding and showing of controls. There's not a lot of detail in here. It's kind of detail for kind of coders for behind the scenes. But what that means, if you go to an effect So if I go to something with a large schematic here, let's make this larger, and you've got an effect. So these, no effects here at the minute. So if I add an effect for perhaps the particles, so if I go to render, particles, and we'll add bubbles. Doesn't really matter which for what I'm taking a look at. Double click on that to get to see the options. So this feature that he's added is kind of behind the scenes, but it means that as you're changing some of the interface, so maybe you tick this first box, you'll have some other interface appear. So you've enabled this option, and you might then be able to put a setting in. And if you untick it, that setting will disappear. So it'll start to make these effects options clearer to read. So it'll only show you the options that you need based on what you've selected within the page here. So it's one of those things that's kind of a behind the scenes, something that might make you say, huh? But it's going to be really useful as you get to the complex effects, particularly things like the particle effects in there, because there's so many options in there. So we've got some details of what he's done behind the scenes. So again, feel free to take a read of that. Oh, this is a great one. JustBurner. He did this fix before the release of 1.6, but I think he got it completed quite close to the release of 1.6. Didn't want to put any new features in so close to the release date in case they go wrong or there's a problem or you want to improve them. So he waited till after the release. So he's now added his fixes in for the current release. So you should find this in the latest nightly build, hopefully. If it's not there right now, it'll be there very, very soon. Because this is 20 days ago he added it, so it should be there by now, I'd expect. So what's he done? So previously to this fix, you could only add 8-bit and 16-bit audio files to play within OpenToonz and to edit with. Now he's added the ability for 24-bit audio and 32-bit, and that's for WAV files and AIFF files. Because often I see reports from people that have said, I put my audio file in, why doesn't it play? And often it's been because it's a 32-bit audio file, which is a really common format for audio files, but they didn't play in OpenToonz. Well, now they will. So that's a huge, huge improvement. So again, something you may think should have been there from the beginning. You've got to be realistic. It wasn't there. It's now been added. It's also added a new 192 kilohertz frequency to the recorder for recording audio. I'll show you that in a second. And you can now add OGG and FLAC files for import. Not file formats that I use, but again, useful for people that want to use those formats. And a couple of extra other things like it's fixed the stereo mixing. They used to mix them in mono first when converting, so you lost the stereo effect. So it's improved that, the use of stereo in there. So if I go to the Windows menu, and you may not have seen this, but there's a record audio option in the Windows menu, which brings up this dialog. And now you've got the option for a higher sampling rate, including up to 192 kilohertz, 192,000 hertz. You can choose mono or stereo, and you can choose 24 or 32 bits. So when you record your audio, you can have a really clear audio being recorded. And you might not necessarily want to record audio in OpenToonz and use that in your final version, depending on kind of the quality you're after. But for a very simple animation that you may be sharing on the internet, an audio recorded directly in the program is going to be perfectly fine. So yeah, great improvements for the audio there. I'm really glad they finally made it in. I saw these before 1.6 came out, and I was hoping they would appear soon after. It's taken a little while, but they're finally in here. Cheers. Actually, there's been conversation. I've been kind of skimming it with Amon Vuk here, or Vuk. Apologies if I got it wrong. It's really interesting, this conversation about which software to use. And some people would prefer Blender for 2D, others OpenToonz, others this other softwares. It's interesting. It feels like a very emotional, personal thing to prefer, be more comfortable with one software over another. I think you're right, Amar. If you like Blender and you might want some 3D, if you like the 2D animation features in that, stick with Blender. You haven't got to move between programs. It's going to be much smoother and you'll get a great animation out of it. Personally, I love OpenToonz, as I think you know. So I'm sticking with that all the way. I'd love to get into Blender for some basic 3D things though, for like working out backgrounds, for composition, maybe for some basic background animation, having blocks moving, could be very useful. But I've not had time to just yet. But yeah, the choice of software, I've always found it really interesting there. But you've got so many options now to work between programs, and you can move your animation and drawings between programs. So you've got the option in there. Yeah, it's better to try and use one program if you can, but there's no reason to do so. If you can use two programs, if it makes it better for you, then do so. As I'm talking about the audio here, I'd generally say record your audio in something like Audacity or an external program, bring it into OpenToonz to animate against, but then bring that render into a video editing program, and then you can add the audio in the video editing program, so you've got it crystal clear, neat from the fresh recording without it going through OpenToonz and its rendering processors. So you get a clear audio. I've heard some audio can be a little bit quiet after being rendered from OpenToonz, so if you can keep the original, it's going to be much better. But again, personal choice. You've got the option there, whichever way you want to do it. So what's next in this list of many things to take a look at? A small change from JustBurner here for some code behind the scenes, so no need to look at that. Here's another cool one. JustBurner again. It's been such a busy chap. Fixing the multi-threaded FFmpeg rendering. So in OpenToonz, I've not really experimented much with this. If you've got a multi-core computer, standard rendering doesn't get the benefit of the multiple cores, so it renders kind of using one core, so it can be quite slow. With this feature turned on, if I can find it, yep, in the import export section, allow multi-thread in FFmpeg rendering. If you tick that and then render, it'll try and render parts of the animation on different cores in your computer. So instead of one core rendering 1,000 frames, if you've got 4 cores, each one could render 250 frames. So it could make it 4 times as quick, potentially. So it's really handy to do, to try and use that if you can. But there was an issue, I'll untick that, where the audio for the first few frames wasn't added to the render if you did the multi-threaded rendering. And this is a fix for that, basically. So the audio is now rendered correctly for the early frames for the multi-threaded rendering. Really worth having that fixed in there. So again, while he's looking at the audio, he obviously came across this issue and fixed this. That's a great fix in there. Did you, Kevin? Yes. I mean, you've got the option, as you say, a PNG sequence out of OpenToonz, put that into your video editor, and that can generate the video. Put the audio on top of it, add the effects, as Amar's saying here, in a separate program, if you want to. It depends what the effects are, how simple they are. Some of the effects in OpenToonz, perfectly fine. Easy to use them in OpenToonz while you're in the program. You can blur perhaps the background and keep the foreground in focus, easier than rendering PNG images and applying the blur in a video editor. Maybe. It depends how you work. So you've got the option, I think, for both. Right, the slow rendering. I'm with you. Yeah, I've not tried doing it yet. I mean, the latest bits of animation I've been doing are the 11-second club. So for 11 seconds of animation, it's not a very large animation. But perhaps it's something next time I should take a look at. Try it with and without and see if there is any difference, especially now this fix is coming in here. Jazz, hello, welcome. Good to have you here. Yeah, rendering, it can be irritating. It can be slow, but this is why you change some of the settings for, if it's not a final version, you don't necessarily need 4K or full HD rendering. You can narrow it down, or you can render just to a sub camera, so you're only rendering a small portion, or just a small number of frames, so you can reduce that down. But it's always going to be the issue that rendering is going to be a slowish process. Depending if you do it too often, using the preview in OpenToonz can be fine. But if you aren't doing it too often, it's an opportunity to get a fresh cup of tea, to stretch your legs and to relax your shoulders from drawing, so you're not getting tense and you don't get kind of ill from that kind of thing. But there are ways to speed it up for sure. Oh, Amar. Yeah, there's another big one. Using the GPU, the graphics unit, to prevent the need to use the preview feature. If you could do it just directly in the viewer, it'd be ideal. Absolutely, it would be. Yeah, that's right, where people have had issues of rendering, stopping partway through for whatever reason. And it can be your graphics card, it could be your processor, memory, it could be a problem with the code would have been an actual bug somewhere, perhaps potentially if you're using the plastic tool or some complex effects features, it can get its knickers in a twist. Rendering to PNG, exactly as you say, means you can continue where you left off. So your 1400 frame example, if it only renders 400 frames, well then start from 401 and render the next 400. And you can do that to build up an animation. And that's where you want to use the preview settings to get your animation correct. So rendering really means that it is rendering the final version, not just a way to preview your animation. Wow, 2 days to render it. And this is, again, Vuk, thank you for bringing that up. Something I've mentioned a few times of creating smaller scenes. So more scenes, but smaller in length. Because then potentially you could have already rendered, if you had, say, 10 scenes for your 40-minute project, 4 minutes each, you could have rendered the first 8 scenes before you get to this tight deadline, and then it's only 1 or 2 scenes at the end to render. So it's not a 2-day job then, it's just going to be a couple of hours for each one perhaps. It depends, yeah, it depends what's included in the scene. Something that Amar mentioned about letting video editors do their job. He doesn't put the effects in OpenToonz, he'll do it in After Effects or his video editor. So maybe you've got some effect you're adding to your animation that is slowing down the render, and it might be better for you potentially is to not put the effects in OpenToonz, render out PNG image sequences or as separate layers, whichever way you want to work, and put them into a video editor, and then add the effects to those separate layers or those image sequences, and the video editor might be able to render it much quicker because, as Amar says, that's what it does, that's its job, so it might be quicker that way, depending what you're working on. But for very simple effects, OpenToonz is great for them. But yeah, it depends, each circumstance is different, and it's a bit of a learning game, I think, to figure out what works for you in your circumstance. And for you it may be you can use just OpenToonz, or you may need to use an external program for effects or for editing or whatever it may be. But one tip there, where you're talking about a 40-minute animation, is to use shorter scenes where possible. Absolutely, that'll really save you so much time by doing that. Just a bug here from Kevin. Or possible bug, if you had translucent levels, they wouldn't render properly if they were not set as visible in the scene, even if the eye icon was selected. I think I know what you mean there, Kevin. So if you go to the drawing room, take a look at the far left here on the timeline. So for each column or each layer if you prefer, so the columns here, so I've got the plant column. If I go to that frame, you can see the plants coming in from the side here. If I turn that off with the table camera stand toggle, that'll disappear from my viewer during editing time. But if I turn off the I button, that hides it from the actual final render. So what I think you're saying is, the eye's turned on, that camera stand is turned off, and because you've got transparency possibly in the opacity slider that I'm using there, or maybe with an effect, it didn't render unless you showed it. Now that is a bug, because you don't need to have it visible here. I could turn all of these off and have nothing visible on screen, and it should still render. So that is a bug in my mind. Hello there, Jose. So by default, rendering is a single threaded process, but if you've got a multi-threaded computer, go to Preferences, and you can tick the box here, allow multi-thread in FFmpeg rendering. So it says unstable because it's kind of a new feature, just kind of a warning that be careful how you use it. So before you render, whether you use the multiple threaded rendering here or not, always hit Save All, please. Please, please, please. So in the File menu, hit Save All. Don't hit Save Scene. Hit Save All before you render. So if anything goes wrong or crashes or is a problem, you haven't lost any of your animation. But yes, in the preferences, you can turn on multi-threaded rendering now, and that should render much quicker for you. Yeah, that is weird. It really should. You don't need to have them visible in the viewer here on screen. I've done it myself. I've turned them all off for whatever reason. I don't know what I was doing. I may have left just one on. I may have been working with one character, so I simplified it. But I didn't need to turn on the other characters to render because they were set up as rendering. So that's strange. I know there is an issue at times where if I turn down the opacity here, still make it invisible here. Now the opacity turned down, sometimes it shows us full opacity on screen. You have to kind of refresh the view or change rooms. So it goes a bit peculiar, and it is really peculiar in sub-X sheets. So I don't know if you had a sub-X sheet, but if you've got the opacity set in a column in a sub-X sheet, you come to the main timeline and you don't always get that opacity shown. That's a bit of an issue there. Okay, so that's the multi-threaded FFmpeg rendering. So that should fix the audio, the missing audio frames. And again, hopefully that'll be in the nightly build soon, which is why I do recommend, as you get to the end of an animation, that's the time to try out the nightly build and try and upgrade, see how it works for you. This is an interesting one, not something that most of us would have hit, but again, it's a crash bug. So I was talking earlier, Amar, about developers should focus on crash bugs where they can, or stability of the program. Here's an issue he had. We're changing between different scenes or projects rapidly, sometimes caused an issue and caused a crash because memory was being accessed wrong. The detail is kind of unimportant to most of us. It's got more details here if you want to take a read, but basically it put a fix in, so changing between scenes stops it from happening. So it's something that you're unlikely to have come across, but you may well have done so. That you may well have gone to the startup pop-up and changed scenes in here or projects in here quickly. You thought it's this project. Oh no, it's not. It's a different project, and suddenly it crashed. So that's a small fix been put in there. Yeah, that's a bit weird. Kevin, just reading your comment there. Yeah, there are one or two peculiar things that crop up from time to time. A couple more things here. I'll go to the bottom. Yes, I only use JPEG images, exactly as you've said, as reference. I never render to a JPEG, always to a PNG if I want an image. And I bring images in as PNG if I get the chance. So if I'm using Critter and I want to export an image from Critter to bring into OpenToonz, I always use PNG. Great quality, and you've got the alpha level transparency background if you need it. But if you've downloaded an image off the internet, done a Google search for a reference image, and it's a JPEG, then yes, it can be used in JPEG. I've never really had a problem with it though for reference images, as I can recall. I tend to just put them to one side. I don't edit them or work with them. So yeah, I guess you could do, perhaps. Yeah, it gets one of these things. It may sometimes crash, and it may be something that's happened in the past that's fixed now. I don't know. I don't think JPEG comes in through FFmpeg though. I can't remember if you had JPEG before FFmpeg is set up or not, because obviously newer versions of FFmpeg, all the time you get a newer version, that'll improve the way it imports and exports certain formats, so GIF, MP4, MP3 and some others. So if it works with JPEG, potentially a newer version of FFmpeg could help that. Okay, so the last couple of things at the bottom here. So I don't know how this affects us and how we deal with anything differently, but JP has brought in this fix from Jeremy Bullock from Tahoma possibly, to make rulers based on pixels rather than through portions of an inch. So that's a tiny change that I don't know quite how that affects us. Another effects fix, and this comes from Shun again, and it's often quite a few fixes for effects in here, and that's because, as I say, he works for Studio Ghibli and they draw outside of OpenToonz. They still draw by hand and import the drawings into OpenToonz for either colouring or adding the effects. So we were talking earlier about should you use the effects in OpenToonz or not. Well, they do for some of the effects, and this is why he keeps improving the effects to make them better. So he's added some fixes for the soap bubble effect. You can read the details really in here. I'm trying to see if there's anything we need to talk about. Yeah, it's internal details unless you're really interested in how these are put together. It used to be 8 bits per colour, was it? And now it's 16 bits per colour image. Details are in there if you want to take a look at that. So some more effects fixes for the soap bubble if you use that effect. Yeah, the stability has got to be top of the list. It has to be. Cross protection and backup. Yep. Yep. Can't agree more. But this is why I encourage two things. One, to use the nightly build, so you've got the latest fixes, so you've got all of these bug fixes in your code. To also update all of your drivers, so using the latest drivers, whether it be your graphics card or your tablet driver, or FFmpeg, in fact, for that external library. And the third one, really, I guess, as well to add to it, is to log any bugs that you have. So if you come across an issue, especially if it's repeatable, because they get one-off issues that can't be fixed because it may be just your specific computer, so it can't be fixed by somebody else because they can't see the issue and repeat it. If it is repeatable, especially, then log a bug here in the help menu. There's a link at the top there, report a bug, so you can do that to give the devs a chance to actually get to fix the issues that are in there. The thing is, Amar, that Critter was made as a painting software first, animation second, so it will have a better brush engine. I mean, it's not too bad in OpenToonz. You can certainly do pretty good backgrounds, depending what you're after. But you can always use Critter and then import the background images just as easily, either directly into OpenToonz, or, you said earlier, into your video editor. They don't even necessarily need to come to OpenToonz. You might do to find the location to make sure your character's the right size, but then add the images into your video editor separately. So you've got a few options in there. Yep, there are brush packs. I don't know if you necessarily need more brush packs in there, because the brushes we've got quite a varied selection of them, and you can adjust their settings anyway. Jose, that'd be fantastic to see. That's a really good idea. I don't know if we get to see that sometime, to see how Studio Ghibli uses OpenToonz. that'd be really useful to see. I've seen a few things and I've discussed things with Shun and other people to see what they do and how they're working. But yeah, to know how they're using OpenToonz in a different way to most of us home users, as hobbyists, where we're drawing in OpenToonz, sketching, painting backgrounds perhaps, adding audio, all the rest of the things, but Studio Ghibli don't. As you say, that'd be a great selling point for the things they do use in the program. Jeremiah, Mr. Henning, sir, hello. Thank you for joining me today. We're having a bit of a chat about development and some new features in OpenToonz. We've been here for nearly 2 hours chatting about it. That's the main point of today's stream. I've been going through a list of recent features, pull requests in OpenToonz and chatting about them, demonstrating and having a bit of a chit chat today. Thank you. Yes, it would be good, Vuk, if we could make any add-ons. I mean, you can make plugins, effect plugins for OpenToonz if you want to add extra effects in here and add the interface to change them around and adjust them. But you can't really get any other kind of plugins directly in there, which is a shame. But again, that's because the fact of the program is 10-15 years old. And back then they didn't allow for plugins, external plugins. If you was making the program today, you very likely would have built it around a plugin system at the very beginning. So external developers can create their own plugins. Would be super useful. It would be, Amar, if you could report the bug directly in OpenToonz without leaving. I mean, I don't know if any of you actually ever clicked the button, but if you go to the help menu and click report a bug, you have to click the report a bug button here, which opens a browser window. Just gives you the opportunity to change your mind if you don't want to. And now you can choose to report a new issue by hitting the green button here, which is hidden behind the chat window above my head. There we go. So that green new button at the right hand side is how you report a bug. If it was directly in OpenToonz, that would be a lot nicer. Kind of doesn't need to be, but you're right, it would be nicer. Yeah, Blender 20 years old, I guess so. But again, it's down to finance, number of people using the program, how popular it is. So let's keep spreading the word out there about OpenToonz and Tahoma 2D to get some more developers interested in what we're doing and hopefully try to get it updated. I mean, for me, 99% of what I need is there right now. It's something we've talked about. Amar, you and I have talked about it, and other people have chatted on the Discord and other places about it's not the tools that make your animation or your drawing. It's you. It's your experience. It's you learning about the animation techniques and the 12 laws of animation and all that kind of thing. The tools help, but it's not about the tools. It's about your ability. So having the extra features and having these other improvements would be great and make things run a lot smoother. But that shouldn't stop you getting your animation done. You can still do great animation in OpenToonz and Blender, Critter, and a combination between all three and more, really easily. Oh, I saw you was moving 2 weeks away. So I guess you're going to be disappearing from the socials and from YouTube for a little while then till you get set up again. Will you have a new studio, a new art area in your new place when you move? Have you got like an outside garage or just a spare room somewhere? Building brand new, awesome. Okay. Oh, building a studio. Awesome, fantastic. Look forward to seeing the tour of that when it's completed. Yeah, it'd be great to be able to build your own studio and your own home. Yeah, as you say, GIMP and shortcuts, you can still get animation done. Plenty of animators out there work with, whether it be Paint or GIMP or Critter or whatever, and work around the inability of the program. I'd like to try Blender at some point, Suhas, but not yet. I don't really have time. I don't have time for what I want to do in OpenToonz or here on the channel. I struggle to keep up with trying to make the videos I want to make for you and get these streams out here. So at some point, yes, I'd like to, but not just yet. So I believe there's one final thing I want to mention on the list of new features today, and that's the OCA export. And this is a huge one, and unfortunately it's one that I've not quite got the knowledge to share exactly with you. I don't know if Amar or somebody else wants to jump in and chat about this at all, but let me tell you what I do know and perhaps read a couple of things off the PR here. Yeah, I've seen some of your Blender work. I think I said before at the time, yeah, that what you was doing with recreating your 2D animations from Tahoma over in Blender is a great way to learn how to use Blender. So you're not just using Blender to, create a cube, then change that cube to create a ball and create a lamp and other inanimate objects and perhaps get those to move, to actually work on something that moves how you want it to move because you've already drawn it in Tahoma. So now you want to do it, replicate the same thing in a different software. I think it's a great way to learn it. Absolutely, Vuk. You get out there and shout about what we're doing with this program. It's free, so get out there and start drawing and animating everybody. There's just a few things to learn to get into OpenToonz or Tahoma, but we all know about that. It'd be nice if they could be smoothed out by the developers a little bit, but we'll get there, I think, with those. Yeah, I'm sure it is Amar. Blender, I'm sure could get into quite comfortably. It's just a little bit of time, I think. But I kind of really want to get into the 2D. I want to learn 2D animation. I want my drawing to get better. I want to work on very much the basics before I get to the 3D side of things. But the 3D side would really help, I think, to be able to work with 2D. So I will get there at some point. Okay, OCA export. So it's now support for exporting open cell animation format, as he says, to some extent. So this is about exporting your project from OpenToonz in a format that can be imported into other software. There's a couple of programs here it mentions that use OCA, I remember reading. And again, Amar, feel free to jump in and speak about this if you want to. Someone mentioned After Effects can load OCA and Blender, of course. So he talks about what it will export. So currently you can export a drawing level from OpenToonz. You can export or render drawing sequences, so an image sequence out of OpenToonz. But this allows you to export, as it says down here, the timeline, basically, the exposure of the frames on each of the columns. So it's a combination, it's kind of not just the drawings, but how they're exposed in the timing with the other drawings. Really, really useful. It can't export everything, as he lists down here what you can and can't export. Mostly to do with keyframes, and some of the effects can't be exported, but the basic timing and drawings can be. So again, other people in the chat, and I know Amar will be able to chat about this more than I can, but it's something that I know a lot of people have talked about wanting to do. And it's a two-way process. So to export out of OpenToonz, so you can work with Blender, and then export out of Blender, you can then import that OCA into OpenToonz to work in OpenToonz. So you can more easily choose the program that works best for you. Yeah, so exactly, one thing you mentioned there actually about the 3D rigs. So you might do some work around the 3D rigs in Blender, do the sketching directly in Blender on the 3D rigs, export that out, bring it into OpenToonz, and then draw your characters on top of that. So you're kind of using the 3D of Blender, but then you can use OpenToonz for the 2D side for drawing in 2 dimensions, but it's got that 3-dimensional accuracy. Yeah. I know, speaking with Sodapop, he was really excited about this, and a lot of people have been excited about the OCA export and import. So really great new feature. Noble Frugal, hello there. Long time no see. How are you doing? Good to have you with us today. Thanks for dropping by. So I've just been going through today a list of, going through some new features in the past couple of months, really since OpenToonz 1.6. I've kind of been very quiet and not really been mentioning these over the past few weeks because I've been working on my 11-second club entry. So I wanted to make today, put some time away today to go through, have a chat about what's been happening in OpenToonz development, do a few demonstrations of them, and have a bit of a conversation with you over this. So the last big thing, OCA export. So that's a great thing, as you say, for getting into Blender, to Blender and from Blender. So if you're working with Blender, say 3D rigs, I can well imagine that'd be so useful rather than rendering images of the 3D rigs into and then put them into OpenToonz to draw over, to actually trace over them and work with them in Blender directly. So that's the main list really, of everything I wanted to go through for the new features in here. I was really keen to chat about these today, saying catch up with what I've not been telling you about. So I wanted to thank, in particular, say Shun, who's always working on the program anyway, but he works, say Studio Ghibli, he's working on features for those, but mainly JustBurner, who's been working on quietly on OpenToonz in the background, adding lots and lots of features. It's really going to help all of us and bringing the software up to date. And also for Sodapop for helping to support him on that. So thank you to both of you. Really appreciated from all of us. So the final thing I wanted to do today, I want to do a little bit of sketching. I'm going to take another break again because I'm so warm in here. It's a warm day today. So I'm going to take a 5-minute break again, stretch my legs, get a fresh glass of water before we start. Now just a bit of sketching and a small chat about my next 11-second club entry. So if you take a short break yourself, stretch your legs, and we'll see you back here in about 5 minutes. See you then. And welcome back. See if I've missed anything on the chat. I think I've caught up okay. Yeah, there's plenty of applications you can use for animation, drawing, for editing together. Plenty of options out there. For now, I'm going to stick with OpenToonz and Tahoma 2D though for what I'm working on, I think. I'll let you know when I'm changing, but that won't be for some time. So what I want to talk about in this last section then, before I go. How warm? Exactly, Kevin. I think on that 30 or 32, it feels like about 1,000 degrees. I was going to check earlier on actually before I started the stream. Yeah, 31 degrees where I am at the minute, but it feels like about 1,000. So rather warm, which is why I need to keep taking breaks today. So this final section, I want to do kind of a quick bit of sketching, but really a bit of a chat before I disappear today. I want to think about the next 11-second club. So I entered back in July. I chose not to do anything for August. I wanted to take a month off. It was quite pressurised to get it done. There was a lot to get through last month. I kind of started a little bit late and I delayed some parts of the storytelling. So it took me the whole month to get through it, and it was very tight. I was working in the evenings after work for the final week for a couple of hours, not super late, but for a couple of hours. So I'd like to enter again next month. So I'm taking this month off to have a think about what I'm working on. A bathtub in the living room, that sounds good. Or a paddling pool to sit in there. Yeah, it'll be over soon. I think we're about finished with this heat wave today, tomorrow. Hopefully it'll disappear. So last time in the entry, I wanted to focus on the movement of my characters. That's kind of what my learning point was. I wanted to do more hand-drawn movement instead of puppeteering that I did the time before. And that went pretty well. I think he looked pretty good in the end. I was happy with the outcome. I still did a little bit of puppeteering and I can kind of see it. It looks kind of stiff. But I got some hand-drawn movement in there. I was pleased with how it looked. And I purposely kept away from adding ink and colour, and especially effects. I wanted to stick with kind of the sketching phase, just to see the movement and the characterisation. And it's often what you see on entries to the 11-second club. They just do the kind of a pencil sketch version of their animation. And you get to see the characters' movement and you get to feel who the characters are. So I wanted to stick with that idea. But last month I did fall into one of the traps that I fell into before, where I made my characters too complex. So I wasn't really concentrating on the movement. So this time for the next entry, I want to focus more on the movement and try and keep that kind of cartoony feel. And I'm kind of glad I didn't enter this month, because it's not really, the audio clip isn't really drawing me to kind of a cartoony, excitable feeling. It's the voice of a chap just talking quietly and calmly. So it's going to be a very subtle presentation of the character and very little happening, I expect. It's all going to be about atmosphere, about the location of where the character is, getting a feel for the background of the character and his daughter. So I'm looking forward to seeing the completed entries. I've got a couple of entries I'd like to share so far that Tom and Amar, if you'd like me to share yours. It's up to you if you want me to share it on the stream or not. But Tom said it was okay to share his, so I'll be popping that on. So I'm keen to see what comes out this month. Hopefully after this quieter month, next month will be more lively and more cartoony. So today I wanted to kind of chat about that and perhaps sketch a couple of things. I'm going to be here maybe for 15 minutes, 20 minutes max to the end of the stream now. So if you've got any other questions about OpenToonz or animation or anything you think I might want to chat about, do drop them in the chat and we'll get to that before we finish. So I wanted to have the characters looking more simple. So last time I started by blocking my characters as I've got on screen here, you can see. And I'll play this in a second and then kind of do a quick bit of sketching. So I want to keep this simple sort of style again, as I did intend to do last month, and then for some reason I just gave up and I went straight into drawing a more detailed character. I'm not sure why I did that, and I kind of lost some of the movement I was putting in, and it made my work a lot harder because there's a lot more to draw in each frame. Okay, yeah, no problem, Amar. Yeah, no problem. I'd like to check before I start showing people's work. They've shared it on the Discord server. Won't necessarily want to share it in a stream though, so I'd like to check first. Let me go to the Discord server here. Yeah, that's kind of, absolutely, that's kind of where I want to get to. I want to get those key drawings in and then just work on the animation transitions. I did that a little bit last month, and it's going to take a few more months of practice to get that working smoother, I think. But I was really happy with how that went. Yeah, it feels a bit like a one-shot clip, I think. Maybe with a fade to a memory they might show as part of the speech. You might do that to get a second shot in there. I'm not sure. So we'll see what happens and what people choose to do. Yeah, exactly, Maria. Yes, and that's what I did. I did the characters. I do some sketches of what the characters could be like, and then I went from this kind of sticks and balls approach that I've got here to my characters, and then suddenly I found myself having to draw his glasses on his face, his little tufts of hair on the side of his head. You are. It's coming over as a no workflow, Tom, this time. Yes. Right. Yeah, it feels like that, Amar, that you might want to do that because he's talking about his daughter. I've not had a long time to think about it. I've heard it a few times by watching your clips here. So let me go to the live stream chat window. Let's bring that in to view. So we've got your latest ones in here. I realise you're still working on them and still experimenting. Let me come to this one first. Make it full screen. I don't know if you can hear the audio on this. Let me know if you need to hear it or not. But I like the way you're starting to experiment with the 3D-ness. That's kind of where I want to be as well. It's one of the things I want to look at for this next entry I work on. So let me just play Tom's before I go any further.
I've achieved none of the goals I set out to do, and sometimes I feel disappointed by that. But seeing my daughter pursue her art fills me with more pride than I ever would have felt achieving that dream for myself.
Yeah, so I can see you're really trying to get that three-dimensionality. Previously, in the April entry, I had things moving in a very flat plane. So if a head moved, it was hinged at the neck, and it would move that way. And I'd use cut and paste or yeah, it was really cut and paste, copy and paste to make it move sideways. And the arms moved sideways like this. They didn't come forwards or change angles or anything. And I can see with your face here, you're just seeing death at the side of him again. With the angles, you're trying to make him look down and look up. I kind of want to get some of that in, but I need to get a more cartoony face. I don't want to make it a realistic sort of character. Let me just hit that again.
I've achieved none of the goals I set out to do, and sometimes I feel disappointed by that. But seeing my daughter pursue her art fills me with more pride than I ever would have felt achieving that dream for myself.
Yeah, it's this kind of movement that kind of scares me a little bit because I've not had that practice yet for my anatomy. To be able to draw a head from these different angles, it's going to look a bit peculiar. But until I practice with it and try, I won't get better. So it's something I've always said on the channel here. Give it a go, see how it goes, learn something, get better. So that's what I want to do for this next release for myself, is to practice getting a little bit of three-dimensionality into it. Let's take a quick look at Amar's. Let's make that full screen here. Okay, you've got the head and face on different layers. A rough that you can overdraw, clean it. Yes, I understand. Cody Bop, hello. Not seen you for a while. How are you doing? Yeah, because if you can get that three-dimensionality, so you know which direction the head's facing, you can then add that expression that Maria is talking about. So you can make him change from being happier to thoughtful, to a bit confused or sad, to excited, and then something else as he's moving around and trying to express what he's feeling. Jose's asking, is there a way to activate the hand tool with the left click of the stylus? What I've done for my pen is I've got 2 buttons on my pen, Jose, and I've set one of these to the hand tool, control and space I think it is. So I can click that and I can then move the background. So if we go to OpenToonz here we are. So if I press that first button, I can move that around by holding my button, the first button on my stylus, or if I go to say the schematic, I can move that around, and it makes it really easy to move around the timeline or any other panel just by clicking the button and using the pen. It feels very natural. So yeah, if you've got a button on your stylus, that's a good way to use it for, I think. And incidentally, the other button I've used for the context menu, so I can click and do a right click somewhere. So it's kind of a rocker button with two buttons on there. Also change the zoom to control and stylus left click. I don't know if you can change the zoom easily, although you can zoom on the panel with the plus and minus keys. It changes quite a lot, so I'm on 50%, then 100, then 200, then 400. So you can use the plus and minus, so you could map the plus and minus buttons to either buttons on your stylus or on your tablet if you wanted to. Just checking through the chat here so I don't miss anything. Yes, filming yourself for reference. Actually, it's something, Tom, we talked about last month that I didn't do, but I'd like to do sometime for one of these challenges. And I'll probably share that reference video on here and embarrass myself that you all see it, just to see how much it helps. I've heard a lot about using self-recorded reference, and it feels like it ought to help. So I'd like to try that sometime myself. Good, Cody Bop. Great to have you here again. Yeah, I remember, Amar, you mentioning you'd use reference yourself. That's one thing though, Tom. You've got to overact. It's a peculiar thing for animation. I'm sure you know this yourself. I'm not telling you something you don't know. That if you just animate, it's like tracing over a video. It looks a bit peculiar if it's too natural and too much like humans. You've got to overact a little bit more, move things a bit faster and a bit bigger and a bit overacted. If you go too far, I'm not keen on that style of animation, but you've got to do a little bit. So recording yourself overacting is a bit embarrassing, I think, but I'd like to give it a go sometime. Yeah, to use as reference, so recording yourself to see how you move and to sort of get a rough timing, not to necessarily trace over. But I'd like to try that sometime, yeah. The thing is, Tom, as you say, if you had many years of experience, you get that internal image. But you see animators talking about themselves recording reference, and you'll see them sharing things occasionally on Twitter or social somewhere of reference they've recorded, and they do have 10, 20, 30 years experience. So even professionals still use that kind of reference. I know that feeling, Amar. Arrogant at times, fighting what is smart and then doing what is harder, thinking I can do it without reference, I know what I'm doing, and then finding out not so much. Yes. Yeah, I'd like to try some rotoscoping with reference of my own or somebody else's at some point, to see if that helps to get either timing or positioning or something. Yeah, to trace the key lines. I mean, it may well be worthwhile kind of almost rotoscoping the silhouette of your character moving. You could do that and then draw the details in afterwards, maybe. Yeah, I've seen people using the reference video of themselves where they do exactly that, Tom. They pick the frames. They may, for initially, just put it onto twos. So take out alternate frames to slow down the movement, and then pick the key frames, delete out some others, change the timing to add that animated exaggeration to increase the speed or slow things down. Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear how you get on, what your experience is of this. No reason why you couldn't, Vuk, creating Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Yeah, arranging the frames, exactly. It's something I've seen happen, and it looks really useful to try. I've not taken the time to try it yet, so at some point I'll do that either on the stream or for a video or something, but the 11-second club feels like an ideal way to give that a go. No problem, Double O. I'm winding up myself shortly, so if you want to catch up on the end bit, feel free to do so later. I just want to do a quick bit of sketching and chatting over this. Reality calls. Me too, shortly. Me too. Yeah, same time next week. 3 PM next Sunday, hopefully. Unless something comes up, I'll let you know if it does. See you then. Have a great rest of your day. Yeah, it's the challenge between drawing what you think you can see again and using the reference to give you an indication of position and speed. Lots of things coming together. Yeah, nothing is final. Great question, Kevin. I think you record yourself doing something like that with imagination. So I'd set up my... for those that haven't got the chat here, Kevin's asking, how do you record yourself jumping from a building, dramatically firing back the guns in slow motion at your sinister pursuers? I think for that, I'd set up my camera pointing either at a sofa or my bed, and I would just sort of walk backwards and I'd fall backwards onto the bed as I'm pointing at the camera. Is the kind of thing I'd do. It's kind of ignore the background, ignore the reality, and it's the character you want to get. So it's when you fall in backwards and aiming towards the camera. So for that, I think you're kind of changing the angle of yourself, which is why if you stand up in front of a bed or a sofa and fall backwards, but keep your arms pointing at the camera, you'll get that change in angle of the character to the camera. But it's something to, I think, just to have a play with, to figure out how you can record reference for parts of an animation that could be really hyper unrealistic. Yeah, once you marry the movement with the drawing, I just need to figure out and get myself doing better at the drawing and then better at the movement, and I'll be fine with that. I think you're right. I think it is. I think you'll start to find your feet for your style, for how you do the movement to match with your drawings, yeah. Right, yes, to sync in the audio with your own recording. You have, exactly, Kevin, yeah. It is peculiar. I still find it peculiar to say, Tom, about the reference requires exaggeration. You don't just point your gun, you point your gun. It's quicker, it's harder, it's faster. It's whatever you do has got to be just bigger to work with animation. But you can just add that exaggeration in afterwards, of course. So record whatever you're happy with, whatever you're comfortable with the reference, but then when you draw those frames, exaggerate that to be bigger. Yeah, snappy versus floaty, 100%. Okay, let me just play this. I want to play this through for you, just to kind of remind myself a little bit and show what I'm talking about. So this was the blocking in I did. I've turned the audio off here. The audio's sort of irrelevant. I've clip on loop play here. So I've got my two characters talking to each other, and there's lots of kind of curved bodies and leaning a lot in my blocking in. As soon as I started drawing the characters over the top, though, they became more stiff because they became more realistic. So I'm thinking about using this actual style for my next entry. So really having rectangle bodies. Simple as that. The hands I may keep as ovals, or might make them slightly more hand-like to give them the thumb or fingers or something. But that's kind of what I want to aim for next time. Exactly, Maria, silent film acting. Yes, where the body has got to express their emotion and what they're doing. It's not subtle, it's got to be quite clear. Puppet versus hand-drawn, like to mix them. I did that last time. So I did things like where the arm is here, and I wanted an ease into that. I duplicated the frame. Let me just show you what I did. So where are we? We're over here. So I'll be sure not to hit save. So let's see which character it is. So it's character 2. So if the arm's going from here to there, that's a great example actually. I did exactly that. So I duplicated drawing number 7. So I press the D key on a couple of frames. And on the first one, I use the selection tool. Let's go to the freehand mode. And I then move the center point to the shoulder, brought the arm down to move it a little bit. Let's turn on the onion skin so you can see how far we're moving. And then I might do it again secondly on the second part of the arm, like this. And maybe the hand, I'll have again put the center point to the rotation point, and I might sort of ease it up like that a little bit. Then the next frame was an ease in to the final point. So again, let's highlight all of that. Center point to the shoulder, bring it down pretty close to there. Rotate, undo that, sorry. Try again. Put the center point to the elbow, bring that right down here, and you might adjust the hand again if you want to. And then when you go through those 4 frames, there's that kind of movement there. So that's kind of the puppet animation I did myself. So let's put those onto 3s perhaps. So if I just press play on that, still quite jerky, it's dropping down to 2s here. So that gave me some movement, but it felt a little bit stiff compared to hand drawing it. It's kind of where I want to move that to later, to hand draw it more rather than using that puppeting style, although it does save time by using the puppeteering method. So it's kind of a balance between the two. But I like the look of the hand drawn more than the puppeteering. So I kind of want to get to that. And also, I wouldn't hand draw the arm just moving in that 2-dimensional state. I'd like to add some 3-dimensionality to it, so you can kind of see the twisting and turning as the arm comes down. That's kind of where I want to get to with that. Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? The rough lines have got more life, and when you draw it neatly, it can just look a little bit stiff and a little bit less lively. Yeah, no problem anymore. I haven't shown it yet. I'll get to that in a second. Yeah, that was for some of it, Tom. I used the puppeteering. For others, I hand drew it, especially for head turns. I tried to do a few head turns where the head turned round, looking from one side to the other. I don't know if you remember my entry. I will pop it up. I wasn't going to, but let me actually play the full entry. We'll get to yours in a second, Amor, no problem. We'll have a chat about that. July outputs. There's a full HD. And let me mute that. Hang on, there we go, pause and muted. So let's bring that down here. Put us onto repeat. So if I put us on repeat play, start at the beginning. So as we move this from that was hand drawn, as the head turned round, that was hand drawn separately, but then the arms moving up and down, a little bit of ease, and when he puts his arms out like this, that's kind of puppeteered. So a combination of both in there. For instance, if I go back to the very beginning, if you look at the chap's eyebrows on the left, his eyes and eyebrows, that kind of small animation is easy to do. But I'd had the two characters kind of looking toward each other and away from each other. And I did add a little bit of the body's curving. As I was saying, the blocking in, I got these curved rectangles. So I tried to include some of that. And for that, it was hand-drawn. It wasn't puppeteered between the two. So you see he's curving to look forwards. And then he curves backwards again. So some of that was kind of hand-drawn to get the movement in. But still kind of on a flat, two-dimensional plane. Not turning around. So it still feels very flat. I can see where I need to improve some of the drawing skill in here for drawing the characters. And for creating characters I can redraw easily, again, which is why I want to keep it simple looking. A simple looking character so I can more easily redraw them. Let's get rid of that. But yes, I absolutely will record some reference. I'd like to do that off stream. I wouldn't do that while we're here, I'm sure. But it feels like from listening to the audio, then you draw the thumbnails to get the rough idea of where you want to be, and from the thumbnails you perhaps record your reference, which is almost like a lifelike animatic, which, as you say, adjusting the frames and picking out the right frames to show. Animating the body with puppet and closing hair with hand drawn. Yeah, there's kind of a combination you can do to save time as well. Yes, as Tom said, Animated Island critiqued last month's entries. Again, really enjoyable to watch. As always, I really like how he critiques them. And especially when it's people that he knows that are in the chat. I know Tom, Maria, myself and Amar have been critiqued by him. And he does aim the comments towards the level he thinks you're at. So he'll suggest what you can do to improve, not about what would be an ideal, what a professional would do, but what you could do to improve to go from level 20 to level 19 or level 5 to level 4, wherever you are on the scale kind of thing. Okay, let's take a look at Amar's and see what we can suggest for this. We've got any thoughts on this? I had a quick look at this earlier. No suggestions spring to mind, apart from I love the character with his beard there. Let me just hit play on this, pop the sound up a little bit. Let me know if you can hear it, or if you want me to turn the music off, if that would help.
I've achieved none of the goals I set out to do, and sometimes I feel disappointed by that. But seeing my daughter pursue her art fills me with more pride than I ever would have felt achieving that dream for myself.
Yeah, when he says pride, I think you really want to fill me with more pride. Really see that sort of the character lifting up and feeling proud. I kind of like that you've got that already in there. It's a weird prompt this month, although I think I say that every month.
I've achieved none of the goals I set out to do, and sometimes I feel disappointed by that. But seeing my daughter pursue her art fills me with more pride than I ever would have felt achieving that dream for myself.
The way he lifts his head up there for the pride is good. I don't know if you want to do that a little bit sooner maybe. It's hard to tell where the key's quite going to hit in the audio. We might want to go a little bit sooner maybe, I'm not sure. I don't know if you're planning to move his hands much. It's the first part of this.
I've achieved none of the goals I set out to do.
That first part, I've achieved none of the goals I set out to do. Where's his disappointment? Even just a hand wave of none of the goals. I don't know. I'm trying to think what I would do for this. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, if anybody's got any comments on this, feel free to share them with Amar in the chat here. I'll play it one more time for you if you've not seen it enough yet.
I've achieved none of the goals I set out to do, and sometimes I feel disappointed by that. But seeing my daughter pursue her art fills me with more pride than I ever would have felt achieving that dream for myself.
Yes, I can see that, Amar. The breathe in. It's exactly what you need. Pride. It really is. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. Yeah, I really am interested to see the other entries. I'm looking forward to marking, even though I've not entered this month, I still plan to go in at the end of the month and sort of take a look at them and place some marks in to see what everyone's done. No worries. It's bound to be scratchy, or I wouldn't say scratchy, but rough. Yeah, you're working through it piece by piece. And again, feel free to keep sharing. Love to see them, to see the progress of where it's going. So thank you for that, Amar. Appreciate you sharing that with us. And I say, do keep sharing it as it progresses. Let me pop that away for a second. And then before I go, feel free to keep chatting about that with Amar. Some good thoughts there about the position, whether it's straight on head or not. I mean, it looks like he's kind of looking to the camera, so it feels like it needs to be a straight on head. But at some point, should he look away? Perhaps should he look down to where the picture is and maybe give it a tap, or just sort of give it a little point and go, feel proud. I don't know. There's a few options there, but I don't give any sort of critique of that without taking time to think too deeply or work on it myself. So yeah, I'll leave that with Tom and Maria, I think, to share that. Basically, I'm looking forward to seeing what you do on that one. Let me close this down, bring up OpenToonz. So let me start a new project just to get it away from this last one a second, just for the last 5 or 10 minutes before I go. So let's start a new one. I'm going to save this one in my documents folder, and let's give it a name of stream test. That's fine. I discard the changes, create it anyway. I'm going to create a new scene, which I'm going to call just test. In fact, not just test, scribbles. Slightly more descriptive. Okay. Yes, I agree, Tom. There's a lot more detail in there than I certainly plan to do. Okay, yes. Again, Amar, this is kind of why I'm wary of giving you too much suggestion of what I might do or what you could change, because you may already planned it, as you say, for looking down for the photo. Yeah, who's he talking to? I don't know if he's supposed to be talking to the camera, who he's thinking about when he's speaking. It's really interesting to what you could do with this. Yes. More of a contemplation. I see. Yeah. Let me throw up a quick standard raster. I think that's fine. I want to go to the raster tab and choose the pencil brush. Let's try the sketch one first. How's that look? No. Try a different one just in case there's an issue with that. No, that's none of those. Right, save. I'm going to restart and see if that helps. Yeah, when I first heard the audio, I was thinking, who's he talking to? And having the chap sitting in chair just feel like a reflection, contemplation, as you say, exactly that. It feels like he's just thinking back. Perhaps doesn't see his daughter too often. He's got the photos there to see what she's up to. Over the shot, looking at the photo could be a good idea, yeah. There we go. So I've got 2 sketch brushes here. Let's grab the lighter one. So I just want to do a quick scribble of what I've been talking about here. There we are. This is, I think, Tom, you mentioned there about it being too elaborate. This is kind of the difficulty with all of the 11-second club challenges, because they're all about 11 seconds. There's not a lot of time to build up the storyline, so you kind of got to hint it enough by having things in the background, or maybe the characterization where he just looks to the side, or he shows is thinking of something, or whatever. There's not a lot of time, so that's kind of part of the challenge as well. Isn't just acting as you would if it was 11 seconds as part of a larger animation. You kind of got to fit it all in. Good question, Maria. What happened a second ago that prompts this contemplation? Yeah, quick and dirty, Tom, exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of directions you could go in with this. Let me just throw this in quickly then. So I wanted to scribble a couple of things. I wanted my characters to be really, really simple. So in the last little sketch I did for blocking in, I had them coming off screen like this, just with a bit of an oval head and a rectangle. Let me try and draw a bit more of a full character, just to start getting some ideas in my mind for what I want to do. So I want them as simple as I can. So I like the idea of the egghead. So I've not really had a warm-up today, so my sketch is going to be even worse than usual. And I want it simple, so I do like the rectangular body thing. I like the sticks and balls stick figure approach. So maybe the leg is going to be sticks and balls. Oval feet, not even drawing shoes on here. And the same for the arms. Just stick figure arms, maybe an oval for the hand, and then from the other arm, something like that. Or maybe for the hands, I might choose to have a bit more detail, so I could either leave it as an oval, but with a thumb, so the mitten hand kind of a thing. Or would I have the hand we were sketching a few weeks ago, with just a couple of fingers over there perhaps? And again, quite crude. So make the arm shorter. Quite crude, but it gives the indication of the hand without it being super detailed. Because I don't think you necessarily need too much detail in the hand if you're going to have such a crude looking character like this. The body could even be it could be the Mr. Bean, not Mr. Bean, the bean body. So the kidney bean shape. So it's got a bit more curvature to it, so it's not rectangular perhaps. And then the head on top could be, again, trying to match the circles, like this, with his legs out of the back, like that. That's kind of what I'm thinking at the minute. Let's jump back into the chat. Yeah, the throwaway approach. I do like that idea. Again, this is why we've talked about doing thumbnailing at the beginning, because that is literally throwaway. It's really easy to do, a bit like I've done here with a couple of characters. Really easy to do, and if I don't like them, I can just delete them or redraw them without being concerned that I've wasted time. Yeah, a picture of unfinished art. You're right, it could be. Yeah, because that could be why you're thinking about your daughter. Yeah, exactly, Tom. We're all making a dozen clay pots here. this is why I want to enter this competition a few times through the year and into next year most likely. Work on a different thing each time. Work on the drawing or the animation or the framing or the staging or three-dimensionality or whatever. And just try and get a bit better each time. That's all we all want. Overall, it's the animation I want to get better at, the movement. And being able to get the movement without trying, without thinking. I think to understand that better. I'm comfortable I'm doing okay. If the arm's coming down, you know, that's kind of where it needs to go to. And then it goes to here. It's not difficult, is it? But then to actually get that working smoothly and looking accurate each time. Okay, so that's the kind of character I want to try and stick to. And I said this last time, and I immediately went onto a more complex character. Don't know why. Let's go to another frame. And the second thing I want to work on is the three-dimensionality. So, again, if I give my egghead, I don't know if I'll stick with egghead or go for circles. And I've got my character here. He's looking over there. And then I want him to move to the right. So instead of just sort of getting the selection tool, putting the center point here, and have his head move, you know, in that one single plane, instead of that, I want to be able to redraw him on a different frame. Coming over to the right. Pop his little ear on. And then in between, have that movement is coming down and he's looking down a bit with his eyes closed. So sort of coming down and then back up to get that arc coming through. And to be able to draw that realistically so it moves and feels totally three-dimensional as he moves over there. That's kind of the two areas I want to work on. Of a simple character just to get that movement going and more hand-drawn. And then this kind of 3D movement. So that's my plans for the next couple of Sundays, is to work on those. Create a couple of scenarios and just draw them in. Just a character facing one direction, turning around and pushing his arms up maybe, and a bit of a head turn or looking around or something like that. It's kind of what I want to do the next couple of weeks. Exactly, the flour sack, yes. Yeah, exactly. Because then you're working on parts that all characters need. It's the three-dimensionality, it's placed them in the real world scenario. I've done a couple of things with a flour sack, but I kind of struggled with his shape a little bit. So if we draw him in here, give him a fat tummy. Oops. Like this. And that's him front on, but as soon as he starts to turn, I kind of struggle with how he looks. Kind of a thing. But bringing the side of the sack, me erase that, doesn't need to be solidly down there. So you might have some of that like this. So I kind of struggle with getting that turnage of him. Even now I am. It's kind of, how'd that look? I don't know. I struggle a bit. So that could be worthwhile, but you've still got the same movement. Me either, Cody Bop. Me either. I need to get practice on that. And I want to be able to feel comfortable and try and have the character looking like the same character as he turns all the way around. No, I don't already have a flour sack in the house, Tom. They really are hard. They really are. I need to just watch a few more people's flower sack characters. I can see kind of who the character is meant to be, but as soon as you start to turn them, give it a go. Perhaps give it a go sometime. Do a couple of small samples and see how it looks for you. Because if he was a cereal box, as you say, let's throw this in. Because you could easily do it with a box sort of character and having them twisting and turning. So you can have sort of facing one way. It's twisted and turned, and you can kind of see the other side the other way. Kind of. Just, it's difficult to draw here because I'm just doing it off the top of my head, but you know what I mean. You can kind of do a rectangular kind of cube box character. There you go. There's a character now. If you wanted to. But yeah, entering the challenge with the flower sack man or as simple a character as you want to choose could be worthwhile doing. Actually, a pillow could do it. To actually have the three-dimensional thing in front of you, as you say, yeah. It feels like the sort of thing that you're breaking through a barrier, a bit like Amar mentioned earlier, that once you know what you're doing, and it's like a light bulb moment, where you sort of get it and suddenly you can see what you're doing. Because when I've seen people drawing the flower sack doing things, it's really easy. It looks really easy. The flower sack characters are just so simple. You know, and the little fella comes over here and is bent down, is twisted round and is about to jump. He has his little tassels on the corners. But it's getting that three-dimensionality is where I struggle to get that in. So maybe this will be a good way to practice for me. Possibly. The draw through, you're not wrong. Yes. I keep taking a photograph in my mind, a two-dimensional photograph, and trying to replicate that rather than thinking sort of, yeah, where the character is, even the bits that are hidden have kind of got extra parts on them. Yeah. I need to have a little play with that. Yeah, something to think about. But yeah, for the next entry, I'm thinking of someone very, very simple. Very, very simple. So to say, I'll have a think during the week precisely what I want to do next Sunday. So next Sunday, I think there's 2 more Sundays left of this month. Let me just double check on that. It's the 14th today. Yeah, 2 more Sundays, 21st and 28th. And then the 1st of next month is a Thursday, which means I'll have a couple of days to listen to the audio before the Sunday stream where we start working on it. So I'll hopefully have a good idea in mind for the story and be able to decide if the story is good enough to work on or if I'm going to skip another month and maybe do some more practice. So 2 more Sundays for that, so I'll be doing that over the next couple of weeks. Yeah, gesture drawing. So it'll be interesting. So hopefully you can join me for the next couple of weeks and perhaps share your experiences to match what I'm doing. We'll have a bit of a draw along together to see what we can do. So I'm going to leave it there for today and end the stream here. So thank you for joining me today. Any last minute questions, drop them into the chit chat. Actually, yeah, that's the wrong words. Good enough to work on is not correct. What I mean is, I think with an audio clip that gives me the inspiration for a story that I want to work on. Because this month has been quite interesting to what could you do? It's quite a subtle piece. And if this was the clip, I'm not sure if I'd enter or what I'd do with it. So we'll have a listen to what that sounds like, and then I'll know by the Sunday what I'm going to do. However, before then, I do want to put together a video about the last challenge. I'd like to share a few things in that, as well as sharing your animations. I was going to put them into that video as well to share them with the community to see. So I need to put that together in the next couple of weeks before I start the next 11-second club entry. So thanks again for joining me. Hope you found some of the new features useful. As I say, they'll be in the next nightly build in the coming days or weeks. Some are already there now, so it's a good point when you're in between animations. Do upgrade to the latest nightly build and see what features are in there for you. So I'll see you on the next video on a Friday, but I'll be back here next Sunday where I'll start work on some of this little character for my next 11-second club entry. So I'll see you next Sunday for another live stream. And that's a Darren Tea. Have you always wanted to animate but didn't know how to start, and software seemed expensive and difficult to use? Well, with OpenToonz, it's free, powerful, and once you know how, it's easy to use. And it's my mission to get you animating with it today. Hi, my name's Darren, and I've been teaching OpenToonz for the past 3 years, showing thousands of students just like you how easy it is to animate with, and cutting through the jargon to show that anyone can animate with it. And by the end of the course, you'll be able to animate traditionally using OpenToonz. And the course is designed for students brand new to OpenToonz, as well as those new to animation. So take a look at the free lessons I've offered below, and then why not sign up and join me animating traditionally with OpenToonz.